Hey, Shawn, welcome to the Maximize Minimalist Show.
Thanks for having me, Katie. I'm excited to hang out today.
Woo woo, can't wait. Okay, this outside of like physical clutter, by far, digital clutter is a close second for so many people.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's by, that's just, it's just the way it is. So I'm so excited to have this conversation, have you on the show today. Before we dive into the nitty gritty, I have a really fun question for you. This is
Yeah.
kind of becoming a new tradition here on the show. The
Yeah.
question is, if you could magically declutter one thing from your life forever, no effort required, what would it be?
My pottery studio.
Your pottery studio.
Yep.
Is it just sitting? Do you use it? Is it sitting there empty or?
I use it, and the more cluttered it gets, the less I use it. And then we do an overhaul, and then I'm back in there again. But I've got a 2.5-year-old. And so my personal time is at an all-time low. Actually, no, not quite an all-time low. I'm getting some time back. So when I go in there, it's like I just want to go and play and not sit there cleaning. And so I may push it all the way to the end of my time, or it's like I really need to go to bed, and so I didn't leave myself time to clean up. So that's and then next time, if I just want to get right to it, then the slow creep happens to then
Yes.
it's like, how did this get so messy in here?
I think a lot of people can relate to that, whether, it's a craft room, a pottery studio, or maybe sewing room. Like when we have these hobbies, we tend to accumulate a lot of things. And then,
Yeah.
the clutter gets in the way of us actually doing the thing and, having the passion for the hobby. So I hope, and, you're not too far from me. Maybe one day I can come help you like get that studio squared away so you can just enjoy it.
That would be amazing.
and we can see the fruits of your labor by seeing your cool pottery.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so to the topic of today's episode, digital clutter. In your opinion, you're an expert in this field. How is decluttering our digital clutter? How does that impact things like productivity, focus, and just like our well-being?
Yeah. Well, if you think about my example with the pottery studio, the more cluttered it is, the less I want to be in there. And if we were to take our digital workspaces and wave a magic wand and convert them to a physical space, what would that look like? I mean, for the majority of the people, it would be awful,
It
right?
would be. I think so.
Yeah, it could because we have so many different tools. Like we've got iCloud, Dropbox, Google Drive, usually multiple Google Drives. And all of these different tools that our stuff just gets spread out. And so instead of having a nice house, even that is cluttered up, it's like having a bunch of portable units all kind of hacked together, and you're having, oh, did I put it in here? Did I put it in there? And you're constantly having to switch back and forth. It's really stressful, but we've gotten used to it. And so it's just like, oh, this is just kind of how it is. Yeah, I need to clean it up. And oh, it's so easy. I can do that later. But how we spend our days is how we spend our lives. And if we're constantly struggling and fighting with technology, it really affects us, and it's insidious. I mean, I've got so many stories of people saying, resisting doing inbox zero, and we convince them, it's like, please just try it out. You don't have to stick to it or anything like that. Let's just clear it out and see if it helps. And then they come back saying, oh my God, I had no idea how much my email was stressing me out. And they thought it was nothing before.
And that's just one piece of it, right? Email.
Right.
And I know like these are, I, I don't know if it's the pace that technology has expanded. That's probably part of it. A lot of us weren't taught, like it's like a life skill to
Uh-huh.
manage your digital clutter. Like we weren't taught that. I learned on like, the old school apples. And now that I'm
Hmm.
36, I'm also at that age where I don't want to learn new technology.
Right.
And
Right.
I'm like, now I know why my parents made me do all the tech stuff when I was a kid, but now I'm feeling more resistant to it.
Yeah.
So back to the email, for someone who's completely overwhelmed, maybe it's an overflowing inbox or scattered files or like forgotten passwords. I'm totally
Mhm.
guilty of that. What's the first step you recommend for regaining control? Because I feel like most people are just completely overwhelmed by all these different kind of categories of it.
Yeah. So the first step with email is declaring email bankruptcy. And it's realizing that you don't have to go through and process all this. I'm going to give you permission right now. Like if you got 30,000 unread emails in your inbox or even 3,000, why go through and read all that and sort it? The fact is, if something was an emergency or something was really important, that person's going to ping you again. So it doesn't mean that we clear everything out, but we pick a cutoff date, usually 30 days. Like everything that's older than 30 days, let's archive it. We're not deleting. You don't have to get rid of it so that permanently, if you want to, great, but you might regret it. Easiest thing would be archive everything older than 30 days. And I've got some tips for you. We actually have a download that we're going to give you in the show notes that you can go to that. And I show you videos of how to clear out, do this email bankruptcy, how to unsubscribe from stuff like that, what I'm going to tell you. So you don't have to take notes, just go download the guide. But yeah, say after 30 days or pick your cutoff, archive that. And now let's process the rest of it. Let's unsubscribe from all of the newsletters and sales and stuff that you're getting over the past 30 days, because fact is that is contributing to so much distraction and all of these other things. So if we can start clearing all of that stuff out, then what we're left is good stuff. And then it's learning some triaging skills of you don't have to deal with everything today. That's not what inbox zero is about, is responding to everything. It's responding to the things that you need to now, and snoozing or putting it into some other system that might work for you to deal with the things that you can't deal with right now later.
I feel so good. So I'm more of an inbox zero, where my husband is, he's so proud. He's like my inbox is like 50,000 or something. Like,
Yeah.
there's like two types of
Yeah.
people in the world type
Uh-huh.
thing. But I think it's got to feel, even for me as someone who keeps a pretty tidy inbox, for those
Uh-huh.
who don't, it's got to feel pretty liberating to go, oh, I can just go back 30 days, literally click a button, anything beyond that mark, and I'm going to archive it. I'm going to just
Yep.
put it to the side. It's
Yeah.
out. It's not distracting me anymore. I don't have to thumb through and click all these emails.
Yeah.
Like even me, I'm like, oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. Like
Yeah.
that's
Totally.
that's amazing. That's such a great tip. And it's
Yeah.
not deleting, so it's not, it's not
That's
permanently
right.
gone. So you don't have the fear of what if I
Yeah.
need to read that in the
Yeah.
future.
And you're not going to scroll through 3,000 or even 30,000 emails to try and find what you're looking for. You have to search. So when you archive, everything is still searchable. So once it gets to this point, then we have to search anyway. So just make it happen.
Is there any quick ways to unsubscribe from newsletters? Or if you're going through let's just
Uh-huh.
say the final 30 days, you're like, okay, well, I'm noticing a lot of these are newsletters, I don't really open and read them anymore.
Yeah.
Can we like click a button, or do we have to unsubscribe per email per person who's sending it to you?
My recommendation would be to do it manually.
Yeah.
Now, there are tools to do it, but you'll find that they don't work. And so, whenever I get resistance from someone not wanting to unsubscribe, it's usually because I've tried that and it didn't work. Is the response? And they may have tried tools, or they went in, they sat down and unsubscribed from a bunch of emails. But if you don't wait for that page to load, then you don't know if Old Navy actually put you on 20 different lists, in which case they do. Yeah, someone bought something in Milwaukee or something from Old Navy, and they accidentally misspelled their email address and put mine in, and I got added to so many lists. It was insane. I actually took quite a bit of work to get off of it. And those are the exception. The majority of the time you really can get off the list. The unsubscribe buttons work. And then from there it's maintaining. So you really should just bite the bullet, sit down,
Yes.
decide an hour, put a TV show on, and just hammer it out.
Yeah,
Now,
unsubscribing is like
mhm.
one of my favorite things in the world. It is like I get like a little
Yes,
dopamine hit.
totally. Well, you get to say no to
Yes.
repeat offenders who have been crossing your boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Like the thing is, you didn't ask for these emails and they've just been sending it to you, and you get to say no, no, no over and over again. That's one of the little mental hacks that we like to help people with sometimes, who are like, oh, this feels tedious. Just shout no every time you're doing it.
Oh, that's right up my alley. I would totally do that.
Yes. So you can steal that for yourself.
And again, you're making space just like with physical clutter. So you can focus on the newsletters you do care about, the emails you do care about, the work emails and things you actually do need to read from your
Yeah.
colleagues and all these things. So it's just there's so much alignment with clearing our digital clutter as well as our physical clutter. Earlier, you mentioned the cloud, and I have a question because
Hmm.
I'm at that age where I'm like, oh, I don't want to learn, but I also need to
Yeah.
know. So
Yes.
I find it confusing. I know a lot of my students find it confusing. Can you explain what the cloud is and
Hmm.
how we can effectively use it to help us with digital chaos.
Yeah. So a cloud is really a massive warehouse with a bunch of computers in it.
That's
It's
it.
That's it. It's and then that warehouse is backed up as some other warehouse in the same country or the other side of the country or in a mountain somewhere deep in this vault with a bunch of air conditioners and computers running. So what it is it's just a bunch of servers put
Mhm.
together and they know because you use your email address. So for me, Shawn at thedigitalorganizer.com. So they know to keep my stuff separate using that email address and my password. And so, like if we're talking about iCloud, for example, um, it starts with putting in contacts on your computer. And iCloud is just a way that Apple has designed their software to say, if we have an account, anything that gets put in this app, copy it to the server for storage there so that when I pull out my iPhone and my iPhone checks in with the internet, it it checks in with the server and says, "Hey, is there anything new?" And it says, "Yeah, there's a new contact for Katie." And it puts Katie's contact in my phone. And then when my iPad turns on, it checks in with the server and says, "Oh, there's Katie, but then there's also Susie as well." And so whenever we update one of our devices, it tells the server what that new information is and copies it there. So when the other devices check in, everything gets there. So that's kind of like the master of keeping track of what's there. And our devices are constantly checking in to see anything new or, hey, I have something new, update everything else.
So it's the main way that everything gets synced between devices.
That's right. Yeah, it all goes through the internet.
Wow. And it's a physical location deep in a mountain. That sounds very like Lord of the Rings. So I like that. At least
Yes.
that's what I
So
picture in my head. Modern
I mean,
day
they
Lord of the
really
Rings.
are thinking about natural disasters and all of these
Yeah.
things. People are really paranoid about like what happens if the Amazon servers blow up or someone attacks it. Well, I mean, the servers are actually spread out all over the world, and yeah, in mountains, they're underground, and they also share. So Apple, Google, and Amazon. Amazon, I think, has the most server storage in the world, and they're all buying space from each other and they back up to each other actually. And they have they've got all their stuff kind of locked down, but it's just about creating redundancy and speed and yeah, making sure that our stuff doesn't get lost.
So what's your take on, I mean, are those ultimately they it sounds pretty safe, but all of my stuff is on Google Drive. So is that part of
Yeah.
a cloud?
It is, yeah. So that's part of it. So Google has their own servers. They're probably buying space from Amazon and maybe even Apple too. And I think the contract shift and stuff they may change. I don't know. I haven't done as much like deep dives, so I hope I'm not just talking out of my rear for all of this. But I know that in general, what I'm talking about is
Yeah.
correct.
Now, if someone wants to back up and have a little more control over, hey, if my computer crashes
Uh
and
huh.
gosh forbid the iCloud goes down,
Yeah.
external hard drive is the way to do it?
Yes and
Question
no.
mark.
So iCloud is actually Apple has recently changed some stuff of how things sync to the computer. So if you're syncing and you look at like the documents folder on your computer and there's a bunch of little cloud icons next to it, that means that the files are not physically on your computer. They are you can see it, but if you double click on it, it's going to download the file on demand just immediately because our internet's so fast it just downloads it. Now, if there's a checkbox next to it, that means it's physically copied to your computer. So
Okay.
when you plug in your hard drive to do an automatic backup, it does pull that file and backs it up onto the external. So actually, backing up to an external isn't as reliable as it used to be because now the default for all of our cloud sync is to just stream stuff from the internet, from the server down to our computers by default. And one of the reasons why that exists is because we've switched from the old style hard drives that used to crash all the time
Oh
to
yeah.
this newer technology called solid state. They're super fast, they're very reliable, but they're a lot more expensive. And so when we used to buy a baseline MacBook or MacBook Pro would come with a terabyte hard drive. Now a baseline MacBook Pro is going to have like 256, maybe 512 gigabytes, which is half of a terabyte or a quarter. Space is more expensive, so we're not syncing everything by default, and a lot of people just don't want to anymore. but I do have solutions for backing up if you want to talk about them.
Yes, give me your take, because I'm so curious, because
Yeah.
when people are back, scanning things like sentimental items, taking
Hmm.
photos,
Hmm.
it's like, again, I would say it's not the majority, it's the minority of things that get scanned, and it's like
Yeah.
you'd hate to lose those. And
Yeah.
I've been doing the external hard drive, but
Hmm.
I don't know, I always
Yeah.
question everything because it's changing, like you said, so
Yeah.
frequently, and I don't keep up with it.
Hmm. So we got three options. One, in your cloud app. So, say if you're using Google Drive and you have the Google Drive for Desktop app so that it syncs what's online to your computer,
Yes.
by default, it says that it's syncing it via streaming. If you switch it to mirroring, then that means it's going to download all of the contents of Google Drive onto your computer. And that way, your external hard drive will work the way you expect it to.
Okay.
Now, the second option would be to get something called a NAS, or a network attached storage device, like a Synology. And so this one is a little bit more nerdy. So you may need to get help setting something like this up. But what's great about it is you just plug it into your router. And when you set it up, there's an app called Cloud Sync, and you sign into your iCloud account, your Dropbox account, whatever accounts you want, and it will download all of the contents to that hard drive automatically, and constantly keep it in sync. So that's what I have. And then the third option would be to use something like AFI.ai, and there's some other like cloud sync utilities. And so so you pay a monthly fee for this one, and they will sync your Google account or Dropbox account to their servers automatically. They can even back up your contacts, calendars, emails, and other things like that if you're using the professional version of Google called
Mhm.
Google Workspace. It used to be called G Suite if
Yes.
you're
Yeah.
not familiar with Workspace.
Okay, this is fantastic. And here's the thing, I have to have regular conversations with you to keep up with this stuff, I guess. So how do you find out? How does the normal person find out, like, hey, I think I'm backing up onto my external hard drive, but it's actually not syncing? How would one know that?
That is
Hire
a
Shawn.
great question, because that's the reason why everyone's in the place that they're in now.
Yeah,
The
right.
technology is changing so fast. Like, you kind of just have to be interested in it
Yeah.
and research and learn. And that can be time consuming on the University of YouTube, but you can usually find the answers there. So, it's at this point, you just have to know what questions to ask. Start with a Google search, YouTube, or now ChatGPT can probably give you more direct and specific help straight out of the box. I mean, you can even ask it step by step how to set up a Synology using Cloud Sync to back up your Gmail account.
There we
And it can
go.
take you and give you step by step instructions to go through the whole thing.
So we covered email briefly, backing up. I'm curious,
Mhm.
what is your, because I get this question a lot for physical clutter. Like, Katie, what does your week and month look like when it comes to maintaining and managing the clutter?
Mhm.
So are there strategies or systems you kind of keep up with for maintenance on the back end once you've established like the main setup?
Yeah, there are a few things that I do that I have like set up as recurring tasks in Asana, but I mean, it's not usually anything to do with cleaning up,
Mm.
because I really hate doing cleaning, like just cleaning up and organizing and doing routine tasks. My brain just wants to solve new problems all the time. Like, just don't like sitting down and organizing my own stuff. I like doing it for other people. But yeah, mine, it just feels so routine. So what I've done is I've created systems for myself so that I do all of the cleaning as I go. So, for example, once I've got a good folder structure, then I was able to change my web browser's preferences to say, instead of just downloading to my downloads folder, ask me where you want me to down, or where I want you to download the file.
I love this.
Yes, that way you put it in the right spot the
Right.
first time, and you rename it to something that actually makes sense immediately.
This
And
is
if you
brilliant.
Yeah. So if you choose a naming convention, like I always do the date first. And so, like, we're about to come in, we're recording in December. So we're coming into tax season soon. So I know that I'm going to get 1099s, K2s, 1120s. I'm getting all these different forms that are coming at me. So I'm going to date him 2024 dash, the form number, dash anything else that I need to know about it. Is it for a specific company? Is it for a specific property? Or is it to me, for me or my wife? So this way I can just name everything in the right format the first time, save it in the right spot. So when I'm going to give all that stuff to my accountant, I have one folder to upload. It is insanely easy for me to do taxes because of this.
Yes, this is incredible. I always have been annoyed by any download. It's like a 16-digit number.
Yeah,
And I'm like,
ridiculous.
this isn't. And then I'm like, when did I download that thing? Where
Uh-huh.
is it? And then I'm
Yeah.
searching my downloads by like the tiny little icons. And there have been so many times I've given up. So this is revolutionary. And here's the thing, it's like people think it has to be this big, massive overhaul, but just this one tip is already going to save me hours for the like
Yeah.
if they're gonna, it's all that time adds up.
It really does. And then when you're in the middle of a project, I mean, taxes, so many people despise it because of the amount of effort it takes to do something that feels so simple, yet it feels stupid. And we get frustrated with it.
Yes.
So it doesn't have to be this way. If you just make these tiny little tweaks to your operating system, like, or your web browser of where it saves things. And of course, you have to have the foundation of a good folder structure, but that's a project that you do, you make these little changes, and then all of a sudden you're just keeping up with it. So another shortcut that I like to do is for tax season, because my taxes, my folder structure for my personal is a little bit deeper than I normally do for my business. That means I have more subfolders. And I'm just okay with that. That's how I always did it before for my business and for other things like I like to have a lot more shallow, so not as many subfolders. But either way, my taxes are a little buried. So every time I want to download a folder, I don't want to have to double click on my drive, financials, taxes, 2024, and then save it from there. So I put a shortcut to the taxes folder on my desktop. So when I download a file, I click desktop, then click on 2024 taxes, and it just saves it right there. And when I've submitted the taxes, I delete the shortcut off of my desktop.
I don't, I'm speechless. You must hear this all the time when you're working with clients. It's these little nuances. You're like, oh, of course. Why didn't I think of that? I didn't even know
Right.
it was an option.
That's what this stuff is pretty simple. There are
Yeah.
some real technical hurdles. I mean, there like if you're trying to move from a really established my drive and you've been collaborating with people and having contractors create stuff for the years, and then you're trying to go professional and go Google Drive, like you're probably going to run into some technical issues and need help getting everything moved over. But truly, when it comes down to it, we're putting files in folders, we're figuring out a name, and then there's some little tweaks there. It's not that big of a deal, and we can actually get through it pretty quickly, especially with some of the strategies that I've got in this like file organization guide. I actually break down the whole thing, the whole process for you. I'm going to give this to you guys for free. As the exact process we take all of our clients through with video examples, file naming conventions. And so that way I can just prime the pump for you, give you the concept, and you can apply it to yourself if you want to DIY it. But it's so nice once you get it all in one place and then you can do stuff like this.
And like people like you give people like me hope. I'm like, oh, I'm not hopeless. Like
No, not at
I
all.
can do these things. Even though I'm 36, sometimes I feel like I'm 95, but I can do it. I can do it.
Yeah,
Okay, this is
I
good.
hear
And
you.
I also love your philosophy of doing it like cleaning it up and like doing it right the first time, which is
Yeah,
ultimately such a time saver. And it prevents, like you said, having to clean up once a week or doing all this back end stuff. So getting to the root of it, the heart of it right away and setting it up. Like you said, we might need some tech support along the way. That's what you're there for. But some of this stuff sounds like we can DIY it. And it's just, we just didn't have the knowledge before.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's the biggest mistake so many people make is trying to set up some new app and only doing it halfway. So then your stuff gets spread out all over the place and you've got data in OneDrive because you just, for some reason, Microsoft just tries to keep putting everything that you make in Word in OneDrive, but then you're primarily using Google Drive and then you got stuff in iCloud and whatever. And then it's all spread out and then we're having to play Sherlock Holmes to find things all the time. So if we take the time to fully pull it all in, understand like, oh, I have a few extra steps to fully set it up, then you can relax into it and do the same thing every time. And then it's just routine and automatic, and you don't even think about it anymore.
One thing I fear, and I don't know if this is a common fear, but I'm guessing it is that, maybe I'll download a new app to help me
Mm-hmm.
digitally organize or upload stuff to, or software. And what if that becomes obsolete as technology
Yeah.
evolves? Like, are these clouds going to be around forever? Or I should, sometimes I feel like I have my
Yeah.
head in the sand a little bit, like everything's going to be okay, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, that is an absolutely legitimate concern, and it's something that we take really seriously because one of our core values is keeping things evergreen and using timeless principles. And in some cases, we might add one extra step where it could be a little bit easier if we used ClickUp and we uploaded all of our documents in there and we used ClickUp Docs and, to create our content and everything right in there so that it's all in one place. And yet, how do I get it out
Mm.
if I don't want to use ClickUp anymore? I got people who've got 15 years worth of stuff in Evernote, and or maybe not 50, maybe 10. I don't know if they've been around that long. But thousands and thousands of documents in there. And then Evernote's like really floundering. I mean, they've gone through multiple CEOs. They've made a lot of technical mistakes that people are leaving. And they're like, they're coming to me asking, how do I get out of this? It's like, well, we don't do Evernote, but in a lot of senses, I don't think that you should even use it in the first place,
Mm.
because I've got a totally different strategy. I want you using communication platforms to communicate. So when somebody sends you an asset, a PDF that you want to keep, you download that into your file system. You don't file that email away. You get the asset, you put it where it needs to go in your file system, and you archive that email. And that way we never have to reference it again unless there was some piece of communication that someone was asking you about, in which case you just search for the email and it pulls it right back up. Same. So files always belong in files. And so when I'm using project management or I'm trying some new tool, if I need to reference a document, I'm grabbing the link to that document from the cloud
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to put it into my project management so that if I want to leave Asana at some point and switch over to Hive or switch over to ClickUp, no big deal. Like it's that stuff are gone. Those tasks are finished. I'm going to grab my templates and I'm going to import them into my new system and start working on it. We have to maintain flexibility
Yeah.
by centralizing our storage and knowing where I'm going to put things and making sure that you can get stuff out.
So you said files belong in files. So if my friend emails me a PDF and
Mm-hmm.
I file that away under like my own folder and email and not download it, that
Mm-hmm.
there, I mean, I could lose that easier. Is that what I'm understanding?
Totally. Because the new data loss is data lost. It's
Mm-hmm.
not that we're afraid that our hard drives are going to crash. I mean, the fear of your hard drive crashing is probably way less, a fraction of what it was 10 years ago when everyone's hard drives. I think I'd be shocked if anyone in their 30s hasn't had a hard drive crash on them.
Yeah.
But it's just we've got too many places to check. And it's really just hard to find because we have so many conversations with people that trying to hunt down a specific PDF from that friend might be difficult. Or maybe you don't talk that much and that you can find it easily. So I just don't think that it's the best place. And people can make it work. So many people, they use email as a filing system and make it work. I just don't like it from a flexibility standpoint.
Right.
And what if you want to abandon that account because it gets overrun with spam or gets hacked, and all of a sudden it's just completely out of control, and you need to move somewhere else.
So this goes along with the philosophy you shared though, like right when something hits, you
Mm-hmm.
open the email, oh, I got an asset in there, download it to this folder,
Yep,
archive the email, and I'm done. I don't have to worry like about
exactly.
it's all squared away from the
Yep.
get-go.
Yep. And the thing is, we're switching communication platforms. People, it's not just email anymore. Now, if you're working, you're usually and you're a knowledge worker, in an office in a team, you're typically involved in a Slack channel or Microsoft Teams or Google Chat. And so, and then we've got text messages and all of these different ways that people communicate with us. Now, if we're trying to file those and create an organization system in our communication platforms, you got a lot of places to check because you might remember this week, but will you remember next month where that was? We
The
can't,
answer
we
is no.
can't do it.
We
Yeah,
can't.
exactly. And the older we get, the more stuff we do. I used to remember all of my clients and what we did up until a few hundred. And then I hit 400 or 500 clients, and it's just like, I don't even remember who you are. And we worked together for like 2 months, because it's just, there's so much that I've done over the years.
What's it called? Is it the RAM or something? Like our brains can only hold
Yeah.
so much. Just like, is that
Yeah.
is that the correlation? Is that like the analogy between like our brains and the computer? Like it has to start dumping stuff at some point so we can pour
Right.
it.
Exactly, exactly. It's buried deep into the vault. It's like I have
Yeah.
to look at the notes. And it's like, oh, right. And especially if I see a picture, I'm pretty visual. Then, if I see, something, some sort of visual identifier, then it lights up, and I'm like, oh, right. And your kids, and you live here, and there's that whole thing that happened, and then it all comes back to me.
So can we talk about passwords?
Yes,
This is like my Achilles heel.
yes,
I've noticed, so I have a Mac, and I noticed maybe in the last year or two they suggest these crazy long
yeah.
passwords, and I'm like, well, I won't remember that. I can save it to my computer. But
Hmm.
interestingly enough, I did have a computer crash on me a year ago. Couldn't get anything back. Luckily,
Oh,
I kept
man.
most things on the cloud,
Yeah.
but all of my saved passwords were saved on
Hmm.
that particular computer because when I got a
Yeah.
new computer, I didn't remember a 20, you know,
Yeah.
20
Yeah.
code. So passwords. So what I do is I keep them in my notes tab, which
Hmm.
I don't know if that's right or wrong, or if it's like just opening me up for like hackers or something. But I
Yeah.
want to talk, and I've heard of LastPass. I've
Uh-huh.
gotten lost in that. So, what is your recommendation for managing all these darn passwords that we have to keep up with?
Yeah. Well, I highly recommend a password manager. If there's one app that I could not live without, it's the app called One Password. It's the number one and
Okay.
then the word password with no space in between. This is by far my favorite app that exists because I work on the computer. I have well over 1,000 logins saved. How am I going to remember all this stuff? I mean, it's just impossible. And then we have multiple devices. So exactly what you're talking about. When you use a password manager, it's stored locally on your computer, and then a copy is also put on the server so that it syncs between all of your devices. And not only that, because it's an independent app and we can integrate those apps into our devices, that means that you can use Chrome, Safari, and Firefox and anything else on your phone and or just straight up apps on your phone and not even have a web browser, and all of them are looking at the same set of passwords. Whereas if you weren't using that, the passwords you put in Safari are only in Safari. So when you go to Chrome, you can't access the password. And so that you're having to switch back and forth and you reset it and all of those things. So that's the main problem with letting your web browser save your passwords for you. And while I do like, Safari's keychain and everything, and it's gotten a lot better. And if you set it up right, it can sync across all of your devices. But that means you can't use Chrome or Firefox and
Hmm.
see your set of passwords without having to go through a number of steps to reveal it from Safari. So I like having that. And it solves the problem with two-step verification. So, especially when you're working with a team, when anyone's got two-step verification on, everything comes to a halt.
Yes.
So, and especially if you're new to starting with a team and then you're getting someone ramped up, just the friction of passwords and two-step verifications is can be overwhelming and very frustrating. You can integrate the two-step verification codes right into the logins. So if you share a set of passwords like my social media passwords with my social media manager, then he's got all the two-step verification codes and I never have to align with him to get him a text message to get into an account.
If I had a dime for every time in my life that someone's like, hey, Google just sent you a passcode. I need it in the next 2 minutes so I can log into your email or log into your
Yep.
Instagram. And I'm like, I'm not by my phone and I miss it. And then that happens 5 times throughout the day. I'm like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh. So you're right. If you are working with a team, it is even that two-step verification is like a major, just takes the wind right out of you.
Yeah. And I mean, I just get so mad about stuff like that. When if you're firing on all cylinders and you got a lot going on, and all of a sudden you get something like that that just bogs you down, it can just be so frustrating and really kind of, yeah, take the wind right out of you. It's just nothing kills creativity like frustration. So that's a
Technology
big
frustrates.
reason why we do this. Is just I don't want people to be frustrated all day long.
So the 1Password, you said it's an app, but
Hmm.
if I'm on my computer, is it going to help me on my computer?
Oh, totally. Yep. And so it's an app for your computer.
Okay.
And then it has these things called extensions that you
Yes.
install in your web browser. And so that way the web browser just looks, or that extension looks at the app and pulls the password and fills it in on the web browser. And then your phone, you can integrate it in with your keyboard. And then there's also an extension for Safari and for Chrome on Android. And then it will integrate in with that. So even when I'm logging into an app like Spotify, it'll just pull the username and password in for me and fill it in, even though it's not in a web browser. So because it's integrated in with the keyboard. So that's one of those things like take your time when setting this up
Yeah.
and do all of the setup because once you get it dialed in, it's so sweet. And importing your passwords from Safari, Chrome, Firefox, wherever you're saving passwords, it's very easy, and they've got a walkthrough. And of course, we can help you out with that if anyone needs help with
Yes, probably me.
it.
I am that person who will be like, "Oh, this app sounds amazing. I'm going to do it." And then I get a quarter of the way there and I'm like, "Oh, I start to lose steam. I question
Yep.
myself and
Yeah.
then I abandon. And then I'm 2 years later, like, God, why didn't I just do this right the first time?"
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
okay, where can my audience connect with you? Because you have so much knowledge, and I love how you have, you're for hire. So, some people we just need you. All right, that's just the
Yeah.
way it is. So, give us
Totally.
information.
Well, it's pretty easy to find us. So the business is called The Digital Organizer, and you can get to us at thedigitalorganizer.com. And if you want that file organization guide, then you can go to thedigitalorganizer.com/max. So
MAX.
yeah, MAX, very easy. Maximize, minimalist. Just go there and you can download the guide, and then I'll send you some videos on organizing your inbox and stuff like that, introduce you to the company, into more of us, and give you some other opportunities in there. And then then you'll be on our newsletter and that we send out on Sundays and get you all kinds of good tips and stories and stuff like that.
And keep us up with technology so it doesn't have to
Totally.
feel like a burden. All right.
Yeah.
I'm in, I'm sold. One last question before we go. It is a favorite of mine, and I think it's
Yes.
a perfect way to end, Shawn, if that's okay.
Yeah.
What is one thing in your home that you'd never let go of and why?
Ooh, that I would never let go of. Hmm. Man, I take this is so funny.
No wrong
The
answer.
thing that comes to mind. Um, my blender. I've got a Vitamix
Yes.
blender, and I am obsessed with this thing. I use it every day. I've got a giant smoothie right in front of me. That's how I start every day. I put so much stuff in there. It's absolutely ridiculous. So it is a full-on meal that sustains me to lunch. And I'm obsessed with my blender. I use it at least once a day.
This is so good. I will never forget the Christmas that I got a Vitamix. It was
Yeah.
right after my husband and I got married, and we were like,
Uh-huh.
we had some cheap blender. It didn't work, and it was
Uh-huh.
like
Same.
it still remains. We still have it. It's on my. I just made a smoothie myself, so I totally understand. Like sometimes these very utilitarian things,
Uh-huh.
they just make our lives so much easier, and like it's helping you
Hmm.
become healthier. Make it's a fast meal. Like there's so many really great pieces. And
Yeah.
it's really not just a blender, right? Because it's helping you do all these things and live the life
Yes.
you want to live. So
Yeah.
this is where it gets deep, but this is why I love asking this question. So your Vitamix, I love it. So you're drinking a
Yes.
smoothie, living your best life, helping people with their digital clutter. I mean, what could be better?
There you go. Yep. And it's very easy.
So easy. I agree. Well, Shawn, thanks for sharing all your wisdom. I know I have so many things I'm walking away with, and I'm also, just like my listeners, going to download that free guide you got us. But thank you so much, Shawn.
Yeah, and thanks for having me, Katie. It's been a blast.
Thanks.